Hey everybody, good morning. Today is Saturday, the 30th of August, 2014. I'm Anna Koyman. It's a tale of two leaders.
We cannot appease this ideology. We have to confront it at home and abroad.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't have a strategy yet.
Britain's David Cameron getting tough on terror, but President Obama has no plan. Governor Mike Huckabee here to react.
And as Joan Rivers fights for her life, her daughter. Well, speaking of true things, we have Governor Mike Huckabee joining us. There he is.
Hi, Governor.
Good morning.
Good morning, all. How are you?
Good morning, Governor. So what did you make? You saw, no doubt, the statement by the president, of course, at his now famous press conference, which he admitted we have no strategy. But the contrast between that and what David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, said in response to ISIS, it's a terror threat, it grows out of Islamic extremism, and we have to do all we can to fight it. What do you make of that contrast between the two reactions?
Well, one is showing leadership and the other one isn't. And what's really tragic is when the president said we don't have a strategy, he might as well have said we don't have a clue. And I want to roll back to last week, because one day you had Chuck Hagel and Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying ISIS represented the greatest threat we have seen. And really helping us to understand that this is not just some minor, contained terrorist group that's located in a tribal setting, but they looked at it as a global threat. The next day they come back and the president says, no, it's really not that bad, and suddenly now Hagel and Dempsey are all walking it back. Look, somebody's running the story here, and the story is, let's downplay this. But that's like saying, I've got a massive tumor inside my intestines, but I'm going to just pretend that it's a small benign knot and not do anything about it. That's how you end up getting killed. And this is why it's such a dangerous thing, and why I appreciate David Cameron for recognizing it for what it is.
You know, it takes me back to August of 2001. And then after 9/11, we all said to ourselves, we'll never forget. Have we forgotten, Governor?
Well, it's not just that we've forgotten, Mike. I think what's really tragic in this case is that we have the context of 9/11. We have a clear understanding of how radical and how vicious, how savage these radical Islamists are. And when Al-Qaeda says that ISIS is too rough for them, and Al-Qaeda were the ones who inflicted 9/11 on us, if that's not a wake-up call, then somehow, if we can't smell the coffee, our nostrils are completely stopped up, which is what I think's happened in the White House. They can't smell the stink. And something needs to happen over there. I don't know if Valerie Jarrett is running the show. I don't know who's running it. But there's clearly a disconnect between reality. And the White House, I think, believes that if they keep saying something, that it will become true, even though it isn't true.
Yeah, and Governor, it doesn't appear that Britain has forgotten. They've raised their threat level to severe, which is their second highest and the highest that they've had in 3 years. David Cameron, a week and a half ago, came back early from his vacation while our president continued golfing in Martha's Vineyard after the beheading of the American journalist. I mean, it was such a tragedy, certainly, and the tale of two leaders is certainly coming to a head this morning. But the White House press secretary seems to be explaining all this away, saying it's all of our fault here in the media, and also the Pentagon. Listen to this.
The president hasn't yet laid out a specific plan for military action in Syria. And the reason for that is simply that the Pentagon is still developing that plan, and he's still reviewing them. The reaction that we had at the White House yesterday was not in response to the president's comments. It's in response to the way it was being reported. We listened to the president's news conference, watched your reporting, and recognized that if we wanted people to have a very clear understanding of what the president was trying to communicate, that we needed to engage you directly to do that.
Governor also heard from the Pentagon's press secretary yesterday. He says that America is always ready. We're always ready. And the underlying thought is that the president is just too reluctant to actually sign off on something and really commit to it. What do you make of the rift between the two that appears to be forming?
Anna, let me go out on a limb. There's a difference between political spin and an outright level of lie and deceit. And it's one thing to spin something, to try to present truth in the most positive light that one can. That's spin. But when you say something that you know is fundamentally untrue, that's a lie. That's deceit. And I think what we're dealing with is deceit. And the reason I say that is because to blame the media, to somehow say, oh, we're ready, we just haven't signed off on it, but that's a direct contradiction. I think the reality is that the Pentagon has operational plans and contingencies. My gosh, at the state level, we had operational contingencies for every tornado and earthquake and train derailment. We had those plans. Sometimes they exceeded what we thought we were prepared for, but we had plans. To say that the United States didn't have any plan whatsoever to deal with an uprising in Iraq or the Middle East, well, that's absurd. On its face, that's absurd.
He just doesn't seem to want to implement them. But also, to take the other side real quickly, Governor, did Cameron lay out a strategy? We're the ones doing airstrikes against ISIS. The Brits aren't.
Well, what he laid out was I think the key strategic point is that you have to take it to its source. That was his statement to me that was fundamentally important. Take it to its source. In other words, an airstrike is fine, but you're reaching out to the branches of the tree. Yeah. You've got to go to the trunk of the tree. Yeah. And that's what Cameron said that was so substantive and so different than what we're saying and what's so different than we're doing. And I want to say what I've been saying. It's time for the president to use his famous phone and his famous pen, make his list using his pen, get on his phone and call these leaders like in Saudi and tell them, take your 300 F-15s and you get in the battle. We're not going to fight all these battles for you. I think America needs to say enough.
Good call. I want to get your take, Governor, on what's happening in Argyle, Texas, where the school district there now has a sign that says this. It's posted in public. Please be aware that the staff at Argyle Independent School District are armed and may use whatever force is necessary to protect our students. Does this make the school safer?
Yes, absolutely it does. And let's keep in mind something. I know some people say, oh, my gosh, you're arming teachers. Well, if you had an armed police officer there, you'd probably say, well, that's okay. These are people who have been through training with their weapons. They've been through psychological background tests. They've had training in the strategic use of those weapons in a school. So it's really not very different from having a resource officer. The difference is these teachers are undercover, and nobody knows exactly which teacher it is, but somebody goes into that school and they're not going to have 14 minutes all by themselves to kill a bunch of people. Somebody's going to be shooting back at them, and I guarantee you that'd save lives in a situation where there was a school shooting.
Yeah, Governor, a little while ago we had one of the moms, she has 2 daughters in that Argyle school, the elementary school there, and this is what her opinion was about teachers with guns.
I have no doubt that they would step into the line of fire to protect their kids. Most of them have families of their own that they go home to each night. And, you know, I feel that if someone were to come into their classroom and threaten them or their students, I think they deserve the right to protect themselves.
Kind of backing up what you said, Governor.
Absolutely. Well, if I were a parent, and I am a parent, but my kids are grown, but now my grandkids, if they were in a school and the teachers were prepared to stand in front of my grandkids to protect them against a shooter, I'd like for that teacher to be armed with something other than a ruler or a piece of chalk. And I think this is, you know, the way to say to some would-be shooter, this is a school you don't want to go to because you're going to be involved in a gunfight from the first minute, not 15 minutes later when the cops can finally show up.
Yeah, being an ultimate equalizer, as you say. And
absolutely.
Governor, we have the founder of this program, Greg Coker, was on here on the program on Wednesday. Listen to what he has to say about it all.
There's 4 numbers that come to mind. So 30 seconds, if I can show them where we can slow that person down for 30 seconds, they're going to move to the next breach point. 2 seconds, a properly trained individual can draw and shoot in 2 seconds. 5 minutes, most of these are over in 5 minutes. And 10 minutes is about the average for our law enforcement response time to any incident.
Yeah, they think about 5 minutes for these things to play out.
Yeah, Governor, can you speak to any dangers that this program could have, though? I mean, if a child gets a hold of the gun and it goes off, you know, are there other? Do you see the other side? Because certainly this is irking the left.
Well, you know, I mean, I guess you could always reach out there and say if, but the fact is people who are trained in firearms don't leave them laying around where a kid can get one. And I don't think that's as big a danger. I think, you know, when you say what is the danger is to the crazy person who would show up at that school with a gun. That's who really has to be worried now, or somebody who thinks that it might be an easy target. That's why, by the way, every mass shooting in America except the shooting in Arizona with Gabby Giffords, every one of them happened in a gun-free zone. Of course. Just keep that in mind.
10 minutes for the cops to show up. Governor, thanks a lot for joining us this morning. We always appreciate it.
Great to see you.
See you tonight.
Thanks.
Well, still ahead, kids across the country headed back to school this week. Along with them, thousands of illegal children. So who's paying for all this? Well, Congressman Louis Gohmert of Texas, he's bearing most of the burden in his state. He's here to tell us what it's like. Stay tuned.
Tap your feet. Yeah. You got so.
Here, kitty. Here, kitty. Oh, this comes snuggled with Mama.
Missing something? Like the BOGO event at Sears Optical. Right now, buy any pair of glasses and get a second pair free. Sears Optical. Don't miss a thing.
Good night, Mama's girl.
Keep all the stuff you love at Public Storage. Each unit is clean, well-lit, and accessible 365 days a year. And it's just $1 for your first month. Click, call, or come by. Public Storage. We'll treat your stuff